Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, this will be episode 4 of the Rape Gang Inquiry that was released June 2026. Some of the more grueling passages were completed in episodes 2 and 3. So this will be more whistleblower testimony. I'm on page 101 of the document. I've already done 3 episodes for 100. So I'm assuming that it'll be another 3 or 4 episodes to complete this task. What we've seen so far is just a snapshot. It's really just a glimmer of all of the trafficking that was going on. There's 250,000 children. It's really the rape of the nation. And these are also people involved in other criminal activities. And what we learned about also is like red rooms and just some of the most brutal stuff. If these testimonies are true, the people who are willing to testify, and they don't know how many suicides there are and how much death, and there's a lot of questions that need answering. There's just absolutely no question about it. This is really a historical event, and it's happening. It's happening all over the Western world. Like, the people who are there to steal and rape, and the fact that there's been really no real pushback or fears of racism is a common theme in this document. It's a joke. It's really a culture and civilization. Like, what civilization do you want? Because you could probably get people who aren't repeat racist. I mean, rapists, like somebody from Japan. I've talked about this a million times in other shows, but other civilizations don't do that. They actually function better than America or some of these other countries like China. It's way ahead of some of these other cities that have become total third or fourth world, porta potties or something. They're just a joke. I've seen it in my lifetime. San Francisco was formerly a very functioning, relatively functioning and supremely beautiful city. A place you could sit outside, in a thriving downtown, which is all gone. Due to policy and leadership, it's a complete joke. And this is policy and poor leadership, poor policy and poor leadership in the UK. So here we go. I'm breaking these down into hour segments. And like I said, this is 101. Whistleblower testimony. Whistleblowers who tried to expose the rape gangs, they're really white trafficking gangs. They're slave gangs. They're white slavery gangs. That's what they are. They are rape gangs, though. Whistleblowers who tried to expose the rape gangs were systematically silenced, discredited, and punished. On occasion, their careers and reputations were also tarnished. Social care professionals, campaigners, and public activists who raised evidence of still ongoing grooming, trafficking, financial abuse of children in care, and institutional cover-ups faced suspension, defamation proceedings, dawn raids, asset freezes, fabricated charges, gagging bail conditions, and career-ending isolation. Wow. It's like the full suite of character and career destruction. Authorities assured them that full investigations had taken place when none had occurred and records were destroyed. Incredible. Senior officers and elected members acknowledged concerns as credible, yet took no remedial action. The state did not merely ignore whistleblowers, it punished them to protect the gangs and its own reputation. Well, it's failed. The blowback and boomerangs can be off the charts. We wish to correct for that, so we invited these whistleblowers to our inquiry. Below are some of their testimonies. A social worker. Our whistleblower social worker is an experienced children's social care professional with nearly 4 decades of service. Her specialist work focused on leaving care services and safeguarding highly vulnerable young people. In February 2018, she raised extensive whistleblowing disclosures concerning financial abuse of young people, misuse of public funds, unlawful sanctions, illegal evictions, racism towards children in care, and systemic failures to safeguard against sexual and criminal exploitation. She was assured that a comprehensive investigation would occur. In the event, responses were delayed, fragmented, and opaque. Senior officers later acknowledged that financial abuse was likely, but claimed proof was impossible due to missing records. She was informed that shredders had been purchased at units and that records may have been destroyed. Despite this, the disclosure was deemed reviewed without her ever having been interviewed. She describes repeated safeguarding failures witnessed while she was an interim co-manager of semi-independent units, including children with severe mental health needs placed unsafely, repeated missing episodes, untreated exploitation risks, and delayed police or mental health intervention. Her evidence illustrates escalating harm, including self-harm, sexual exploitation, criminal exploitation, and unlawful housing practices. After raising these concerns, she experienced retaliation, including removal of payments, suspension based on unfounded allegations, and professional isolation. Senior leadership and elected members repeatedly failed to engage meaningfully with her concerns. She concludes that the local council prioritized reputational and financial considerations over child safety, leaving ongoing risks unaddressed. Caven Vines, Rotherham campaigner. Caven compiled multi-agency records from 2003 onwards. These showed that police, councils, and MPs knew about organized grooming by Pakistani Muslim gangs years before any public admission. Vines engaged with national media and provided evidence to senior officials. He states that one of the interviews in which he partook, namely with Sky News, was misrepresented, which led to defamation proceedings that rendered him bankrupt and ruined much of his life. He alleges perjury by MPs and a failure by police to investigate it. The pattern demonstrates that early whistleblowing on institutional awareness produced retaliation rather than protection for victims. Tommy Robinson, national activist. Tommy Robinson documented grooming patterns after the exploitation of a close female relative at age 14. He heard hundreds of similar accounts from families across England. When he formed the English Defence League and spoke publicly, South Yorkshire police allegedly subjected him to repeated arrests and dawn raids on his family homes. He reportedly also faced fabricated charges, asset freezes, and threats that forced repeated relocations. The state treated public whistleblowing on the ethnic and religious patterns of the gangs as more dangerous than the gangs themselves. After Robinson repeatedly detailed the scale of Muslim grooming gangs across Britain, the state responded with targeted legal action that in effect silenced him. In May 2018, he live-streamed outside Leeds Crown Court while defendants in a major grooming gang trial were entering the building. He was immediately arrested for breaching the peace and charged with contempt of court for violating reporting restrictions that protected the defendants. He was sentenced to 13 months in prison on the same day. Although released after 2 months on appeal, the case was reheard, and in July 2019, he was resentenced to 9 months imprisonment. This sentence combined 6 months for the Leeds offense with 3 months for breaking an earlier suspended contempt order related to a similar incident at Canterbury Crown Court in 2017. The timing and nature of these prosecutions, to many, suggests clear retaliation. Robinson had been one of the most high-profile voices highlighting the grooming gang scandal at a time when authorities in Rotherham, Rochdale, and elsewhere were still denying its existence or suppressing evidence. Instead of investigating the gangs he identified, the state focused its resources on imprisoning the man who had drawn public attention to them. The contempt charges ensured that his reporting on ongoing trials was criminalized, while the grooming networks continued to operate. There is a prima facie case that the repeated use of the courts against Robinson was not about fair justice, but about punishing one of the individuals who forced the grooming gang scandal into the open long before official institutions were willing to act. Fred. Fred is a father and information technology specialist with approximately 6 years' experience in child protection work. His involvement began after his own daughters were groomed offline by a former partner of their mother. His eldest daughter recognized the risk and disclosed the situation, enabling Fred to intervene promptly and protect his children. This experience prompted him to join an online child protection team. For around 2 years, Fred worked as a decoy, posing as a child online to identify adults seeking to groom and sexually exploit children. He was exposed to highly disturbing sexual communications, which had a severe psychological impact and eventually led him to step back from decoy duties. Leveraging his professional background, Fred shifted his focus to developing tools for digital tracking, perpetrator identification, and forensic evidence gathering. His work is designed to produce court ready evidence. He has collaborated with multiple British child protection teams and interfaced with various police forces, including specialist online child protection units. To date, Fred has assisted in the identification, tracking, and reporting of nearly 1,300 suspected child sexual predators. These cases have resulted in arrests, prosecutions, and convictions. At least 4 cases involved attempted child trafficking. He has also identified and provided technical data leading to the shutdown of approximately 30 deep web servers hosting large volumes of child sexual abuse material. Fred has observed that many offenders are repeat perpetrators, with some convicted multiple times. In his view, rehabilitation is ineffective for this category of offender, and current sentencing practices frequently fail to act as a deterrent, with some individuals receiving only community orders despite strong evidence. Fred believes that online grooming could be substantially reduced or eliminated through existing technology and artificial intelligence. Such systems could detect grooming behaviors in real time based on established models. A recurring pattern in the cases Fred has supported is that the vast majority of suspects initiate contact with decoys, suggesting they are actively targeting multiple children. He highlighted one specific case on one platform involving an individual who presented publicly as a Quran and Arabic tutor linked to a mosque and teaching center at 2 universities. Extensive digital evidence, including chat logs, IP data, and location information, was submitted to the police. Despite this, the individual appeared to leave Britain shortly after, later resurfacing in the country and abroad while the investigation remained open. Fred expressed concern about the lack of apparent action in this case despite strong evidence, and noted subsequent cyber attacks on his systems originating from the Middle East. Fred has faced direct personal threats, including a life threat from a serious repeat offender with prior convictions for abduction, torture, and rape. Fred provided this testimony to highlight the scale of online grooming, technological opportunities for prevention, and systemic gaps that allow perpetrators to continue offending. Demographics and culture. Perpetrators from Pakistani Muslim or other Muslim backgrounds formed the core of the rape gangs nationwide. They operated under an honor and shame clan code that treated non Muslim girls, especially white working class girls, as property available for sexual use because these girls had no male protectors who could retaliate. The men began by showering the girls with attention, gifts, alcohol, and drugs. This then escalated to coercion, gang rape, and trafficking. They transported victims across towns, shared them with friends and family, and sometimes forced conversions to Islam, followed by religious marriages. The Muslim men justified the abuse by describing white British girls as easy, trash, or morally inferior. The same networks targeted Sikh girls until Sikh communities mobilized collective male protection and forced the gangs to withdraw. British girls were not permitted such a defense. This religiously framed exploitation was repeated in every major town and city and beyond. Britain has seen a series of high-profile convictions for organized group-based child sexual exploitation, commonly referred to as grooming gangs. However, the number of convictions amount only to a small proportion of the men who carried out the crimes. In cases where perpetrators of Pakistani heritage were named publicly in court records or reports, their names have consistently been Muslim in character. According to the 2021 census for England and Wales, around 93% of individuals identifying as Pakistani by ethnicity also identified as Muslim, with only about 1% following another religion, the remainder having no faith recorded. Researcher Peter McLaughlin in Easy Meat 2016 compiled a comprehensive list of grooming gang convictions from 1997 to 2018, with updates in subsequent analyses, drawing from published court outcomes. His examination of names indicated that approximately 87% of those convicted bore distinctively Muslim names, which was a figure echoed in related analyses far exceeding the Muslim proportion, around 6% of the general population of Britain. The majority of these convicted groups consisted entirely of men from Muslim backgrounds. These groups are predominantly of Pakistani heritage, especially when the group exceeds 10 or more members. The larger group size dynamic of Pakistani perpetrators is on display in major prosecutions and official reviews from locations such as Rochdale, Rotherham, Huddersfield, Oxford, Telford, and others. Other convictions have involved groups primarily composed of Muslims from non-Pakistani origins, demonstrating that the issue is not necessarily confined to one ethnic group. Two Somali origin gangs in Bristol, one mainly African heritage gang in Banbury, 3 Iranians in Chelmsford, 3 Syrians and 1 Kuwaiti in Newcastle, 2 Turkish men in Somerset, a Romanian rape gang in Rotherham, 1 large Newcastle Operation Sanctuary case involving 17 men and 1 woman from diverse Muslim backgrounds, Albanian, Kurdish, Bangladeshi, Indian, Turkish, Iranian, Iraqi, Pakistani, and Eastern European heritage. Nearly all published names were Islamic. These patterns are drawn from judicial proceedings, sentencing records, official inquiries such as those into Rotherham, Rochdale, and others, and public reporting on concluded cases. Recent developments, including ongoing reviews and data audits, e.g., national audits and reopened historic cases, continue to examine the scale, characteristics, and patterns of such offending. With regard to the scale of the crimes, this is reflected in conviction records, police data from relevant force areas, and audits, all of which note overrepresentation of South Asian Pakistani heritage men in certain group-based cases, while acknowledging data limitations on ethnicity. Nationwide, smaller non-Muslim groups often feature different dynamics or victim profiles compared with the classic multi-offender grooming model in larger operations. The term Asian has frequently been applied in media, official statements, and public discourse to describe the perpetrators in grooming gang cases across Britain. This broad labeling can be misleading, however, because Britain hosts a substantial number of non-Muslim Asian populations, such as Hindus and Sikhs from India, Buddhists from Japan, and Christians from the Philippines and Vietnam. These populations have, with only very rare exceptions, had no involvement in these offenses. In fact, members of these communities have more often appeared as victims than as perpetrators in the grooming gang cases that have come to light. Dr. Ella Hill, a survivor of the Rotherham grooming gangs and now a qualified doctor, has courageously shared her experiences and reflections in multiple public forums, including testimony to the 2022 Jay Inquiry, a July 2020 podcast interview, and a 2018 article in The Independent. Her report is entirely consistent with the evidence that was heard at the rape gang inquiry. Following years of repeated sexual violence, severe beatings, and attempted murder by her abusers, her family members were forced to change their surnames and relocate to another part of the country so that she could complete her schooling and later pursue and obtain a medical degree. In her accounts, Dr. Hill has consistently described the abuse as being both racially and religiously aggravated. She was explicitly told during the rapes that the attacks were happening because she was white and because she was Christian. She explained that she was initially groomed and then trafficked by a Pakistani Muslim boyfriend to groups of Muslim men. She was repeatedly taken to various houses and flats where she was raped, physically assaulted, and tortured. Even after she tried to escape and hide, her main perpetrator tracked her down, broke into her home, and attempted to kill her on 5 separate occasions. She survived these attacks but was left with extensive lacerations and bruising. On at least 5 occasions, she approached the police, presenting medical evidence of her injuries, yet each time she was told there was nothing they could do and her evidence was not accepted. Dr. Hill has emphasized that the verbal abuse she endured was saturated with both racial and religious slurs. While being beaten, she was repeatedly called a white slag, a white whore, a white cunt, and simultaneously condemned as a non-Muslim who deserved punishment for failing to follow Islamic rules. Her abusers, she said, operated according to what she termed grooming gang ideology, under which they believed their crimes were religiously justified. In fuller detail, in her submission incorporated into Associate Professor Lisa Oakley's evidence to the 2022 J inquiry, Dr. Hill stated, quote, I was told that I must respect their religion. This was the first of many confusing lies that I was forced to believe. I was told that to show them Muslims respect, I mustn't eat pork. I was told that Muslim girls are good and pure and stay virgins until marriage, but all white girls are slags, and they all sleep with hundreds of people. I was told white girls are trash. They are all whores. They are lower than shit under your shoe. They don't obey Allah, so they deserve to be punished. They don't dress modestly. Muslim women are pure because they cover down to their ankles, down to their wrists, and the hem of their top comes down below their knees. White girls show the curves of their bodies, so they are asking for it. They should be raped as punishment for not obeying Allah. Kafir, non-Muslim girls are worthless. Sex with a kafir girl doesn't count as adultery. Only sex with a Muslim woman counts as adultery. If you're not a virgin before marriage, you should be beaten. Many times I was told that the Quran says, if one of your wives disobeys you, beat her. This was often quoted to me before they beat me with their hands. They believed they had a position of religious moral superiority over non-believers. They believed it was their duty to punish us, and they believed that doing so made them good Muslims. This is what they were taught by their mothers. They were taught that witches in Pakistan are blonde, so blondes are more evil, and they deserve worse punishment. I was told that in Islam, if a girl or a woman looks at a man who isn't her brother, father, or her husband, then that means she wants to have sex with him. So I was told to look at the floor when I was around Muslim men. So when I did look at the waiter in a restaurant, I was then taken away to be gang raped as punishment. I was told that according to their faith community, girls are old enough for sex when they start their periods at age 11. Many of us had to endure the sexual act of thighing, Arabic mukfadhada, which I'm now told is a religiously sanctioned way of molesting children according to some Islamic scriptures. You have to lie down on your back with your legs straight together, and they straddle you and F between your thighs. I was beaten, strangled, suffocated, and my head held under water, tortured, kicked, and raped over 100 times. I was told that if you don't scream when you're raped, then you're consenting to the rape. So you should be stoned to death. I was told that Muslim girls know this because the Quran says that Aisha's silence was her consent to the marriage to Muhammad. So Muslim girls know to scream, but white girls don't. So that's their fault then, because they're not Muslim. When I did wear a headscarf to try to protect myself from being raped, I was told to get it off and they raped me again. I know now that all these so-called ways to protect yourself from being raped are rape myths used to excuse perpetrators' criminal behavior. They threatened to kill my parents if my parents tried to stop me seeing them. I was intimidated with guns and threatened with body parts being cut off with knives. When I tried to escape, I was told that I had offended their honor, so that they had to spill my blood. They did this in an honor attack. All of the sexual abuse that I experienced was linked to spiritual abuse or religious abuse. The religious scriptures were used as tools of control to force me to conform to their will. I was not allowed to question these religious beliefs. They used their religious moral authority and self-proclaimed elitism to control me through use of scripture, forced confessions, censorship of decision-making, requirement of secrecy and silence, isolation, excessive shaming, and punishment around sexuality, and requiring unquestioning obedience. This is like the bite model. This is like cult behavior. I experienced this as a deeply personal, terrifying physical, emotional, and spiritual attack. Every time they quoted scripture, it was very hard to argue with. To them, it was like I was arguing with God. To me, it was actually like I was arguing with the devil. They used their so-called religious moral authority to do the most horrific, immoral acts imaginable. The entirely typical experiences of survivors known as Sarah and Anna, both of whom were helped by the Christian Legal Center, provide further illustration of the religious elements reported in some grooming gang cases. Sarah endured a 12-year ordeal after being kidnapped from the street at the age of 15. During this period, she was repeatedly drugged with Valium, beaten, and raped. At one point, her abuser presented her with a certificate from the mosque and declared that they were married according to Islamic rites. Later, he divorced her under Sharia procedure simply by stating, "I divorced you 3 times." She was then immediately married in a ceremony conducted by an imam to a man she did not know. Within minutes of the ceremony ending, while the wedding party continued downstairs, she was raped by her new husband. Over the years, Sarah was subjected to 8 forced abortions, one of them 5 months into pregnancy. When she accompanied her abuser to medical appointments, he required her to wear a hijab and walk 5 feet behind him. She was compelled to learn the Quran in Arabic and permitted to speak only Urdu and Punjabi. She was also made to cook and clean for the gang members who abused her. Sarah made several unsuccessful attempts to escape. On one occasion, after she reported her kidnapping to the police, she was interviewed by a Muslim officer who switched off the tape recorder and instructed her to drop her allegations because of lack of evidence. She later learned that this officer was imprisoned for child sex offenses. In a separate case, Anna was living in a children's home in Bradford in 2002. From the age of 13, she was raped and abused while in the home, and at 15, she was forced into a Sharia marriage. Her social worker attended the marriage ceremony, permitted her husband's parents to foster her after she became pregnant. The parents received a fostering allowance from the state. Anna described her situation as one of domestic slavery, in which she was treated like a maid and repeatedly sexually abused by dozens of men. In Britain, reports from Metropolitan Police in London alone have indicated an average of 1,125 sexual assaults per year involving unlicensed taxi drivers. A significant proportion of the offenders in these cases have been identified as Muslim. A further form of sexual exploitation associated with certain Muslim communities across Britain is marriage trafficking. The Forced Marriage Unit, FMU, handled 801 cases in 2024 concerning girls and women resident in the country who were forced into marriage with men, providing direct support in 229 of those instances. Among the 280 cases where the focus country was recorded in 2023, the 6 countries accounting for the highest numbers were Pakistan, 45%, Bangladesh, 13%, Afghanistan 7%, India 3%, Somalia 3%, and Nigeria 2%. Of these 6, all except India and Nigeria have overwhelmingly Muslim populations. Earlier Home Office figures from 2009 showed that 90% of forced marriage victims in Britain were Muslim. In more recent years, however, the FMU has ceased collecting or publishing data on the religion of those involved, a shift that echoes patterns of avoidance seen during the grooming gang investigations. An FMU report stated, "Forced marriage is not a problem specific to one country, religion, or culture. The FMU does not record data on religion. No major faith in the UK advocates forced marriage. Freely given consent is a prerequisite of Christian, Hindu, Jewish, Muslim, and Sikh marriages." Although forced marriage occurs in various communities and is not unique to Muslims, statistics show a clear overrepresentation of Muslims among those involved in forced marriage cases. It is also inaccurate to claim that Islam mandates a woman's consent for marriage. Similar patterns of sexual offenses disproportionately involving Muslim men have been reported in other Western countries with significant Muslim immigrant populations. In the Netherlands, considerable media coverage is focused on so-called lover boys, who are predominantly Moroccan Muslim men. These individuals first seduce Dutch girls, often teenagers, then coerce them into prostitution in order to profit from their earnings. According to a 2001 report by the Amsterdam-based child rights organization, approximately 5,000 ordinary Dutch schoolgirls of age 13 or 14 from typical family backgrounds had been lured into prostitution by lover boys. The documentary film Lover Boys, directed by Julia Rook, Follows the work of Ibrahim, a Dutch Moroccan social worker, supporting both the perpetrators and their victims. In Sweden, a 2021 academic study examining Swedish rape offenders concluded that nearly half of the convicted individuals were born outside Sweden, with immigrants from the Middle East and North Africa being markedly overrepresented among them. In Australia, 9 Lebanese Muslim men were convicted in 2002 of gang raping white girls. Contemporary media reports at the time indicated that police were aware of over 60 female victims linked to the group, although the convictions related to the rapes of 7 girls. Police seized a mobile phone message from one of the perpetrators that read, "When you are feeling down, bash a Christian or Catholic and lift up." Statistics. Offender data from the 2017 Quilliam Foundation analysis, together with recent independent investigations, reveal a consistent disproportionate involvement of Muslim men, overwhelmingly of Pakistani heritage, in group-based CSE. The 250,000 figure is not a precise count. No such count exists because the British state has failed to record it. Total failure. We may regard it as a conservative estimate that accounts for the organized, repeated nature of the abused. Many girls raped hundreds of times by multiple perpetrators, and decades of institutional concealment. Analysis of 264 convictions for group-based child sexual exploitation from 2005 to 2017 found that 84%, 222 offenders were South Asian, with the vast majority Pakistani Muslim. Only 7% were white and 8% black. Additional context from expert commentary includes statements by Dr. Taj Hargi, an imam at the Oxford Islamic Congregation, who observed that virtually every individual in these grooming gangs appears to be Muslim, estimating that 95% of those involved are of Muslim faith. As previously stated, Peter McLaughlin's research indicates that approximately 87% of rape gang convictions were of people with distinctively Muslim names. These figures stand in marked contrast to the much smaller proportion of Pakistani and or Muslim communities within the overall population of modern Britain. Muslims approximately 6.5% and Pakistanis around 2.1%, according to the most recent census data. It's a very small proportion. Multiple examinations, including police data from various forces, national audits, and independent reviews, have documented this overrepresentation in group-based offending of this nature, even as some earlier official narratives emphasize no single community profile or sought to downplay ethnic patterns. The number of reported rapes in the United Kingdom has risen substantially since 1997, when the era of large-scale mass immigration into the country commenced under Blair. Official police recorded crime data for England and Wales indicate that rape offenses stood at approximately 8,500 in the year 2000, a figure closely aligned with levels observed in the late 1990s prior to major changes in recording practices. By the year ending March 2025, police recorded that rape offenses had increased to over 70,000, according to figures published by the Office of National Statistics, reflecting a rise exceeding 800,000 even after accounting for population growth of around 15% during the intervening years. Those are just the ones reported. In stark contrast, Poland, which maintained relatively low levels of immigration throughout the same period, has experienced a decline in reported rapes. Polish National Police data showed 2,400 recorded rape offenses in 2000, falling to 1,100 by 2023, a reduction of more than 50%. With a stable population of approximately 38 million, this equates to a per capita rate of around 3 rapes per 100,000 residents in recent years, compared with over 100 per 100,000 in the United Kingdom. These comparative patterns drawn from official sources highlight divergent trends between the two nations. References include the ONS Bulletin on Sexual Offences in England and Wales for the year ending March 2025, the Home Office Historical Police recorded crime tables, and Eurostat police recorded offenses data alongside Polish national statistics compiled via Statista for the period covering 2000 to 2023. Per capita calculations further underscore the scale of the disparity when relative population sizes are considered. These figures indicated that the rape gangs are a specific ethno religious phenomenon, with Muslims, especially Pakistani Muslims, specifically overrepresented. The influence of Islam, Muslim treatment of non Muslims worldwide. Britain is not a unique case. This sort of thing goes on anywhere that either welcomes mass migration from Muslim countries or contains long established Muslim populations. There is a consistent pattern of sexual violence directed towards non Muslim minorities in settings where Muslims form the majority. Across Britain, as we have noted, girls from Sikh and Hindu backgrounds have also been targeted by Muslim gangs. Unlike the white British majority, these non Muslim immigrant populations were never prevented from organizing as a collective to protect their own. In doing so, as was their duty, the network of Sikh organizations drew attention to the appalling treatment of non Muslims in Pakistan. We need only look at the appalling treatment of girls from minority faiths in Pakistan, where Christian, Hindu, and Sikh girls are kidnapped, forced to convert to Islam, and married, to get an understanding of the underlying motivations. In 2018, around 1,000 girls in Pakistan's Sindh province alone suffered this fate. In many cases, perpetrators are granted impunity due to corruption and connivance with local officials. Excuse me. In April 2024, UN human rights experts expressed serious alarm regarding the vulnerability of minority girls in Pakistan to forced religious conversions and forced marriages. Their press release highlighted that Christian and Hindu girls, in particular, face heightened risks of abduction, trafficking, child forced marriage, domestic servitude, and sexual violence. Human rights groups and media reports, according to a 2021 BBC investigation, have estimated that thousands of non Muslim girls, primarily Christians, Hindus, and Sikhs, are abducted annually in Pakistan, compelled to convert to Islam, and forced into marriage with their abductors. One documented case involved Farah, a 12-year-old Christian girl, abducted from her home in June 2020 by 3 Muslim men, raped, and forced to perform household labor as a slave. A common sequence in these cases sees a girl abducted, coerced into signing a conversion certificate, and swiftly married to a Muslim man. Police in Pakistan frequently side with the abductors over the girl's family. When parents pursue legal action, courts tend to uphold the legitimacy of the conversion. Birth certificates may be falsified to indicate that the girl is not a minor. Contact with her family is typically blocked. Following conversion to Islam, non Muslim parents lose all authority over their child, as Islamic law prohibits non Muslims from exercising guardianship over Muslims, including their own offspring. The evidence from grooming gang convictions across Britain repeatedly shows a Muslim background among many of the perpetrators. When this is viewed alongside similar patterns of sex crimes observed in both in countries of origin for immigrants and in Muslim majority societies, it offers compelling grounds to consider that elements of Islam are contributing to the grooming gang scourge in our country. While it is unsurprising that a religion can shape and regulate sexual behavior, the suggestion that Islam might play a role in driving sex crimes remains deeply uncomfortable for some in the liberal West. Even so, the possibility of an Islamic influence in these crimes cannot be dismissed. The available data strongly points towards it as a hypothesis that merits serious examination. The impact of any religion on individual behavior is rarely direct and unmediated. It is heavily filtered through culture, which a religion can gradually reshape over generations. Not all Muslim communities or societies are influenced by Islam to the same degree or in the same manner. Minority Muslim populations may behave differently from majority ones. For instance, convictions of Indian origin Muslim men in grooming gang cases across Britain are notably rare compared with those of Pakistani heritage. This disparity may relate to a demographic context. Muslims form only about 14% of India's population, with Hindus comprising about 80%, placing them in a minority position where social and legal constraints differ markedly from Pakistan, where Muslims dominate overwhelmingly and non-Muslims constitute a small, often marginalized minority. In such a setting, exploiting non-Muslim neighbors becomes easier. At least 8 theological aspects of Islam may contribute to cultural patterns that enable or normalize the sexual abuse of non-Muslim girls. These include 1, the doctrine of Muslim superiority; 2, the principle of loyalty and disavowal; 3, male dominance over women; 4, enforced seclusion and veiling of women; 5, forced marriage combined with the absence of a fixed minimum age of consent; 6, the perception of female sexuality as inherently dangerous or fitna; 7, the historical Sharia institution of slavery; and 8, the system of dhimitude. These are all rooted in classical Islamic theology, up to and including Islamic jurisprudence. But even in Sharia governed nations, adaptations are common, such as setting a minimum marriage age or restricting unilateral divorce by, by men in order to lessen the harsher effects on women. All right, I'm at 118 right now. I think I'll stop there because I'll go through that 8 point element that they just said, 8 theological aspects of Islam. I'll do that next week or the next episode. That'll be episode 4. So, yeah, it's really bad. And it hasn't been addressed. People are afraid to address it, but crimes are crimes. Like, these are just criminal. They're simple crimes. So I think that that's the way it should just be prosecuted with a non-tinged lens, really. Just crimes are crimes. It doesn't matter the color of your skin if you're doing it. Anyway, thanks for listening. There's 3 other earlier episodes you can check out. You can find these things ad-free on my Patreon. I post a lot of things on my Patreon that I don't post elsewhere. YouTube has a tendency of banning or taking some of these things down. So a more complete record is probably on Patreon or on my podcast. And I have 5 books and 5 documentaries on Patreon. So you can go to Patreon and pay $5 a month and watch all my documentaries if you like. They're older, they're more informational documentaries. But if you're interested in kind of fact-based visual stuff, they're for you. All you have to do is go to the shop tab, and you shouldn't have to pay. I do have a lot of PDFs there, and there's a lot of other things I post there, a lot of pictures, some of the things that I wouldn't post on Twitter. But thanks for listening. Thank you very much. And thank you for your support. I really appreciate it.